That was a very reasonable.
Welcome everyone to this regular scheduled board meeting at the South Region. Pray all please stand and join me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks everyone for coming. Okay, do we have any comments from the audience on non-agenda items? Staff. I don't think we do. Does anybody have any corrections to the agenda or consent calendar?
Then I will move that we adopt our agenda and consent calendar as presented.
I'll second that.
And it passes 5-0. Thanks, everyone. Purchase of Vaughn chopper pump with Tahoe Steel Pump Station. Are you guys all pointing fingers at each other? That's how I see it.
I was trying to work into this slowly, you know. Good afternoon. I'm Jeremy at Rutherford, and Chris Braga. I'm the supervisor of pumps, and Chris is the lead of pumps. We've been currently having some issues with the top fuse pump station. We have currently the station's built with 2 pumps. Excuse me if I stumble over my words here. I'm nervous.
Are we nervous? In front of us?
Yeah.
Jeremy, I always tell everybody is, you could do our job, but we couldn't do yours.
Okay, stand back and wait when they'll close on.
He get up here on his knees.
So currently we have a problem with one of the pumps, so that gives us one reliable pump at this time, coming into the winter season again. And if we have another rain on event, snow, or snow, we can end up with some issues with we have one reliable pump. And so what we're asking for is, I don't know, I need to go over discussion with you guys.
No, not really. I mean, you can give me a brief description of the chopper pump.
The chopper pump is basically you can run all the wipes and ropes and whatnot through it, and it will not plug. Just have to keep it adjusted yearly, and it'll run well and maintained properly.
Pretty much just choose your...
Yes. It'd be a dry fit submersible. The advantage of that is we'd be able to pull out the current pedestal pump and put it in its place. Dry fit submersible is a little more expensive because of the cost of the motor, since it's not submerged cooled, so it has to be air cooled. So it's a little bit more cost on the motor. But in turn, you can take that exact same pump and put it to a wet well, so it can be utilized once, as in the CIP. The plan is to build a wet well in front of that station, a 3 to 5 year plan, and we can pull that pump from that position and use it in the wet well, or use it as a spare pump for that wet well.
Anything else you want to discuss?
I'm for this, and one thing is that pump station services, they're essentially everything west of the Turkey River, so it's really important to keep that running. And the lead times, say 4 to 6 weeks?
No, it's about 10 to 12.
Yeah. So hopefully the old ones get along.
This time, we're limping along. We just did replace the element, 2 weeks ago, hoping to improve it. After doing that, it improved a little bit, but not to where we're comfortable to run, with heavy snow and I&I coming into the system.
The other thing is that this is not the first time we've had a problem with the lead time on pumps and things.
versus doing that more, you know, what should we have on the shelf just in case, you know, we have a real problem. Can't wait.
Yeah, talking with the pump crew here, a lot of the guys like the chopper pumps. Nowadays with all of the wipes and rags that are being flushed into the system, it's becoming more and more of a problem. So you guys are aware about the Big Five, how we're taking a look at redoing the Big Five stations.
Yeah, and your write-up explains that this will be compatible with the remodel.
Yes, we're trying to keep all the pumps safe. I don't want to come in here and ask for a $70,000 pump. 3 years from now, they go in and redo the station, and we have a useless pump. So we are trying to work together, try to figure out what pump we can utilize. Like Jeremy said, you can use this one in a dry pit, or you can turn around and put it as a submersible. So when the keys, like he said, is done, you know, we can either use this as a backup pump, buy 3 new pumps, and have one on, you know, spare, but we can utilize this one either way, dry pit or submersible. And I believe you'd be able to use this in a couple other stations too by the time we're done.
Pretty much all the electric gear that can handle a 75 horsepower. That's what Bijou, Motor Truckee, and Johnson.
This might, hopefully it's a good question. Would it make sense to put one out and Fallen Leaf too, or do they have much trouble with that?
As far as an extra pump,
Well, that's funny,
Yeah,
because that was on my other report that I was gonna do that Chris put me on.
no, wait till later.
Yeah, no, we have been.
We've actually swapped out, yeah, we've swapped out 98% of them with a grinder pump. Same thing as a chopper
Okay,
pump.
all right.
But yeah, in essence, it'll chew up solids, so. yeah.
And staff reports, we have the Fallen Leaf update, which Jeremy gets to do. And we'll clue you in more about Fallen Leaf and what we've been doing out there.
Okay, gentlemen. Anybody else got anything?
Thank you.
Okay. Under item 6A, I make a motion that authorize the purchase of bond chopper pump for Tahoe sewer pump station pump number 1. We approve bond chopper pump as the pump for the application presented due to special circumstances as allowed for in the purchasing policy. And secondly, approve the pump to be purchased from the sole source vendor. And third, authorize the purchase from Walkwell Solutions in the amount of $69,884 plus sales tax and freight.
I'll second that.
Okay, that passes 500. Thanks again, Jeremy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Julie here, she is here.
I'm here. Marlette Waterline Replacement Project. We are almost done with this project, with the exception of the replacement of the private service laterals, so that the 58 services that have over time been served by mains in their backyards will now be able to be served by mains that we have finished installation in their front yards. So I think I talked about this a little bit before, but I'll go over it briefly again. The Ponderosa and the Marlette Waterline projects have moved to the top of our waterline replacement list, mostly because they have these small diameter mains that have been located in the backyards of a bunch of our customers. And before we put meters in for those services, we wanted to get those backyard mains abandoned and the mains relocated into their front yards, into the street in front of their houses. So, we have been conceding over the last couple of years of how exactly best to go about talking to 22 customers on the Ponderosa project and 58 on the Marlette project about having their private service laterals relocated. And originally, we had started with Ponderosa by sending out letters to all the customers about hiring their own plumbers, having the work done with our approval based on the prices we saw, and then us reimbursing them for the work that they had done, because ultimately they will own the private laterals that are being constructed here. That didn't get a whole lot of traction in the Ponderosa neighborhood. After several months of waiting for responses, only about 8 of the 22 had actually gotten back to us with quotes from plumbers. And half of those were well in excess of what we had budgeted for the work, which is approximately $5,000 per relocation. We sat back down again and he said, maybe there's a better way that we can do this. And so for Ponderosa, what we ended up doing was attaching a bid item to the water and sewer improvements project that did recently. And that item for the Ponderosa neighborhood will be done on time and materials basis by that contractor. For Marlette, because that project had already bid and been awarded, the idea was, well, because we're planning on proceeding with a time and materials-based contract, there's really not any difference between whether we had it bidded originally or we attach it as a change order. We felt comfortable proceeding with this rather sizable change order to the Marlette contract without going through the regular bid process. So the change order that we have developed is basically a $300,000 change order to the Marlette project. It will be charged against on a time and materials basis with the inspection from district staff, and they will agree on a daily basis with the work that has been performed, and then we will basically process it for their actual costs, and that'll be done by Thomas Hayne Company in the 2019 season. Any questions?
Sounds like that was your only choice to get this going.
Yeah, we think that we'll actually be able to come out ahead doing this this way versus having the individual customers hire their own plumbers and us reimburse, because if we're doing it on actual cost, there's no risk that they're building into their pricing. And we've already identified 3 locations that will be done next week in the Marlette area with the approval of this change order item. That Thomas Hayne Company said, hey, we're here, the hole is already open, we'll just plate it over and not backfill yet, and we'll be able to get those done easily, and I would be surprised if they come in at over $1,000 a piece. So that'll give us a little bit of cushion for some of those that will be more challenging and will be more expensive next summer.
We discussed this in operations committee quite a bit last 6 months, so it seems like it's the way to go. It just wasn't working out the other way. So I'll move that we approve change order number 1 to Thomas Hayne Company in the amount of $300,000 and add 424 days for the contract.
I'm seconding that.
Before we go on this, Dwayne, did you have something?
Yeah, I was wondering, is there, we're doing some of the work, we're on other people's properties to some degree. Do we have some sort of liability indemnification thing that we do with them, or we just?
Our staff pulled together a very brief agreement with Gary's review and help on some of the language that basically gave each of the individual customers the option of either hiring their own contractor with a maximum reimbursement rate of $5,000, or they could check the box that basically indicated that we would be doing the work for them. They were allowing us access to their property, that we would be returning the property to as close to the condition in which we found it as possible, and that there would be basically a 1-year warranty on that work, after which point, you know, if there was any future problems with the work that had been performed, it is theirs.
Okay.
kind of catch all of that?
Yeah, this was the things to do with the north on it.
Pretty good draft, yeah, on one page.
It's on one side of one sheet of
Good
paper.
thing we had you, Gary.
000 type.
It has about 10 references to addendum, though.
Thanks, Julie. That's fine.
Great, thank you.
And we are already on page 1.
Payment claims in the amount of $1,550,498.
Okay, that moves us on to standing and ad hoc committee reports. I'll go first because I've got an easy one. Our meeting with the city last Friday, they decided at the last minute no one was in town to make the meeting. I don't know why it took them until Friday morning to figure that out, but they figured it out.
We call.
Well, we call, okay. So, that's even worse than that's even worse than I thought, right? Okay. Anybody else have anything outstanding ad hoc committee reports?
Well, we do actually have a couple.
I just say, weren't you guys looking at an affordable housing thing? We do. So you want to go, Chris, and then I'll follow up?
Yeah, I'll summarize our actions in the meeting. We went through the ordinance change that we've been discussing. I think the main thing is that we're going to put an agenda item next meeting. Essentially allows sewer units specifically for affordable housing to be transferred. With a small administrative change to or administrative charge from the district to administer the change, and again, specifically for affordable housing. We don't think the impact's going to be huge because there's a bunch of other affordable housing issues that are coming up with different agencies and other reasons. But it gets us started in the conversation of being the first ones out there to actually do something, take action to try and spur the growth of affordable housing in our community. Right?
I agree, and we sort of use affordable and workforce sort of interchangeably, but I'm real happy with the work they did on it. It's just specific to 120% of the median. You can't be in excess of, they can't have it in excess of 120% of the median income, which sounds like a lot.
Is that language from the city?
It's from the, I think.
From the city, from
The general. So, yeah. Because the whole purpose of this was to be exactly in compliance with the city, so that when they went through with it, they could transfer their existing units.
And when you and I talked to the city, they indicated that they were willing, if they had units, to transfer some into a project, so that we can, get a project or two.
Actually, immediately, right? They said they had something ready to go, and I think it had to do with the kitchen units added to the, one of those.
Yeah, how they configured them. I think Tim,
He just popped out, the idea was, it's only a kitchen if you include an oven.
Right.
So in order to, I guess it's under consideration on maybe a done deal, whereas if you just have a hot plate, then you don't need an extra sewer unit, you don't have an official, full kitchen. So then we wouldn't be looking to require an additional sewer unit for the project. But that would be, let's say they did put a full kitchen.
Yeah, it gives
it would be
them
an
the option.
eligible project for receiving these extra sewer units.
we let them have an easy bake oven for $3.
Well, and additionally, I think Ken had a list showing the additional sewer units and subscribers that the city has like 57.
Yeah, I was gonna say they got a
They're a very small number.
Yeah, remember, he said they had more, but that's up to them to figure out. So theoretically, we could let the public know, and those people, because there's about 20, maybe 2,500 units out there, 2,000 scattered around you want to do something good, you can send the units that you're not using, you can transfer them into these projects and help our community.
Yeah, and then we talked about it and constantly made the decision that we're not going to try to regulate exactly where the units are coming from, in other words, private parties can transfer some units, the receiving project has to be affordable housing project, but where they're coming from, the sending parcels could be anybody's. And we're also not going to try to control if the sending party wants to try to make a few bucks on transfer. They want to sell them for $100 or $500 a piece, obviously a lot less than buying new units.
Yeah, and I hate creating an artificial commodity though.
I mean, there was a black market in the past.
Right, in the past, that was.
And, we really have no way of controlling that or regulating that or people finding out if the deal between the sender and the receiver is a free deal or donated or what.
But it was different in the past in the sense that we thought we were running out completely. And so that created a high dollar end that went above our price. The cap on a black market, I've tried to think about this and that.
Well, the cap would come in
The cap would be they could buy it.
Right.
They could buy it lower
It would be full
month.
retail, right?
Yeah, full retail.
So that would keep a cap on that. So I thought they did a real good job of drafting this. It wasn't just one page, but. We're getting better.
All right, anything else?
Well, we're hoping to, hopefully I'll be at the next meeting, but we're hoping to bring it back at the next meeting for the board to vote on it. And if I'm not here, I certainly hope we do, because I think it's a good thing. And if nothing else, we don't create a wave of people doing the units just to us. I think the domino effect will be good on the other government agencies to loosen up all those restrictions and artificial commodities and square footages and things like that.
Okay, I think that's it for the standing ad hoc committee. Do you have any individual board member reports?
Yeah, I do. Last week, I attended the CASA conference, so it was 2.5 days. I got to go down with Jeff Lee. We got to spend some quality time together discussing a lot of the issues that were there, so that was good. Unfortunately, I left the file at home that I had the agenda in, so I'm trying off the top of my head to remember some of the issues that were there. This was the 63rd annual conference for the CASA, which has been around for 63 years. There were about 300 people registered for the conference, so it was a good cross-section of people. There were discussions regarding cybersecurity, media relations, when you have emergencies and how to handle them and some things. And I've got a copy of some of the PowerPoint presentations that I'll bring in to Richard. You can get to whoever is going to be in charge. There was a lot of talk about what really happens when you got an emergency. Each board member should know that there's one person that's the contact. We don't want to have with every board member, doing parts of the stories here, and they don't jive with what the whoever is representing the district get some conflicts because you may not have the latest information. There was discussions on social media and how that's being used by a lot of districts around the state. There's some other discussion. There was one speaker by the name of Benedict who founded a couple of companies called Xenon. You probably recognize that name, Richard. That did a lot of innovative stuff, wastewater treatment. He was a very interesting speaker. And his company's now developed a new anaerobic digestion system that's about 3 times as efficient as the older systems. And Jeff and I actually talked to him later about it. Jeff's kind of interested in doing something like that, so he's probably going to talk to you about that. There's several people have discussed micro plastics break down. As they break down, they finally get to little fibers, and they can plug up filters and a lot of other things, and then you get into the food chain, and they just don't know where it's going. People from EPA have been there to the state, they talk about that. We just didn't have enough data to know exactly how it's going to affect the environment. But, you know, when you think about plastics and, you know, problem, you think about, well, it's just out there in the middle of the Pacific, there's that big gyre that's just going around that, where it collects that stuff, but it's everywhere. You know, it's going through treatment plants, and so that's a problem. I don't know, I'm forgetting a couple other sessions there. The next one will be in January, the Indian Wells. I suggest that, you know, board members that learn a little more about the business. I've said it before, but it's something that everybody can benefit from.
I wonder if those bacteria can work in cold weather. That'd be interesting. Right
You know,
now.
a lot of bacterial processes are temperature dependent.
Yeah, of course.
And, so it's for every 10 degrees increase, you double the activity. That's kind of a rule of thumb.
All right. Good to know.
They have 10 degrees centigrade, and then vibration, something like that. Yeah, and that's where.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons that the tower out there didn't work years ago. They had to tear it down.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Anybody else got something they want to kick in with? Okay, so, Kelly, do you have anything for the, Lorraine County Water Agency?
Well, we have our meeting here, the meeting was here last week. Elaine attended, and it was, John gave a very informative presentation, as did the Tahoe as well. And it was very good. Talked a little bit about the MOU and the change in funding with Colorado County Water Agency.
The change should make it more flexible, because a lot of our projects are multi-year projects. The old system was very sort of cumbersome to move from fiscal year to fiscal year.
And Ken had already been up there, what, the week before, or a
Yes.
couple weeks before, we just talked about that, you know. So I think it'll be a positive thing.
I think Ken really appreciated the support we gave him when he first started. We supported him on a few issues, and I think he's returned the favor in a lot of ways.
And he really modeling this MOU on our process. They said they appreciate the fact that when they send out notices, our staff responds right away, we give them information on time, list the project we're going to work on the next year, and, you know, we're not coming in months later, and, you know, so he really appreciates working for us, and really wishes that, you know, he's told me that the other agencies work like our staff.
Okay, you know, I guess I should add that I'm going to back up a couple of steps and let the rest of the board know that Kelly and I are actually in the process of reviewing all of the general manager applications that we received. So we met with Nancy and Richard this week. We met on Monday, actually. And we're all set up. They've got it all on the web, so we can pull. Have you figured out how to get on that page yet, Kelly? It's not at all the way Nancy said it was, so if you need help, let me know.
I actually, depending on what time it is, I can swing by her office.
So we're in the process of that. We have a schedule for when we're going to submit all our scores and rank the people, and then we're going to meet with Nancy, and then eventually it's going to be the board and all that. And we'll keep you guys apprised as we go along.
You're going to be 20?
Well, we have 22 that made the cut. There was quite a few that were not responsive in one way or the other, where it was just, there were specific directions, do this, don't say see resume, and they would write see resume. Stuff like that, that's just like, if you can't follow basic little things like that, we're not really interested when we're starting this
They
process.
checked the box that they understood what, the instructions, yes, I understand.
Yes, I understand, I'm not gonna follow them, so there. So I think about 20 of those were bounced for various reasons along those lines.
cleans up back with the blue box checks. You're already thinking.
So we'll let you guys know. Well, we have no target number as to how many applicants we're going to go on. It's going to be based entirely on how they're scored and what we feel the quality of the applicants are. And we will pass on our recommendation when we have them. Plus, we'll pass on all we got in case you guys want to fish into it. That'll be there.
Or the initial process is going to be complete by September, week of September 14th.
We had the 10th, right? 14th.
Maybe 14th or maybe.
Right, yeah, we'll be so, anyway, I just thought I'd let you guys know that process is ongoing. Okay, where are we now? We are at the general manager report, aren't we, Richard?
Yes. We did have a meeting at the city council chambers last week, August 8th. It was initially we made a report that connected to the ongoing state grant project, and the purpose of the report was to inform the public as to some of the preliminary results and where we had done the drilling, what we were doing. And Evo gave gave a quick update to bring, if anybody wasn't in the first meeting, what was going on. And then again, the message that the water that's being delivered by all the water companies in town is safe to drink, meeting all the standards. And then Evo gave the audience, since we were talking about the results of the field testing, a brief lesson in hydrogeology. And I think it was a struggle, I think, for some of the audience to follow along. We plan on later, but I thought Evo did a great job, summarizing a very complicated issue, because it was complicated, and if you don't get to have some way of understanding what the topic that's being talked about, you would have no idea the significance of the results for it. Like I had a guy I met years ago as a concrete pumper. Even at one point was describing the aquitars in the area, the clay lenses, and there's some discontinuity in the area. He was describing it as a hole, and my friend came up at the end of the meeting and goes, well, I think I followed the conversation, but the one thing Evo said worries me. He talked about that hole in the aquitar, that hole in the clay lens. Well, it is significant because that is a pathway from the shallow zone to the deeper zone for that contamination to travel. Huge potential impact on how to clean up the contamination. So at least for some people in the audience got the complicated process and complicated issues we have out there at the South Y in dealing with this PC bloom. So that was really the substance of the meeting. We informed them that we were going to have a follow-up meeting where once the data was analyzed for moving forward, that probably early fall we would have a third meeting and to watch for the advertisements and the information. One of the significant things also about that meeting is Mahan came, like they did the first time, but they asked to be part of the presentation panel. So Scott Ferguson was up there on the DS with us and made a presentation, and so based upon my introduction and his comments, I think it was very clear. Anybody attending or watching it on the live stream, which the city staff was gracious enough to sit up again for us, that it was Mahan's responsibility to investigate the contamination, to try to determine where the contamination came from, who was responsible, and to try to hold those that were responsible for the contamination to define the plume and to get after cleaning it up. So it was, because I think that was, Dwayne made the comment that at the first meeting he thought maybe members of the public didn't fully understand that the water agencies were not responsible for the contamination. It was really the Mahan who was responsible for determining who was and who should pay for it.
South Tahoe now did a good article.
Yes,
I thought she explained it really well.
Yes, Paul was the only reporter, radio, TV, was the only one there from the news sector. The first time we had, TV channels from Reno and Kay and everybody else who was there, but she came up and asked questions afterwards, so she's at least engaged and is reporting on the issue. Subsequent to that meeting, we're going to continue talk a little bit about PCE and about some future plans. Because of back channel news and some back rumors we're hearing and the continued delay of the Lahan to issue the directive, towards the DRP, that we have formulated and discussed today, basically a path forward in terms of trying to get something done out there. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Shannon, who has formulated some mission statement, you might say, 2 steps for us to take moving forward.
So I think you have, am I correct, you have in front of you a little handout, a little graphic there. A lot of this story is told with that graphic. I think what we are concerned with is that we're 60% of our district's water supply is within about 4,000 feet of this plume. And now it is lateral to the plume. It is not in the direct down slope path of the plume. But we have significant concerns of our water supply being contaminated. And in the efforts that have gone on so far with Lahontan, they have they're doing a little bit of studying. They've done some intermittent studying in the past decades, and even the work that they are trying to have the RP do is about studying the plume. They have funding under SB 445 to do Lahontan to do some studying of the plume. The concern is that none of those studies clean up a pound of PCE contamination in the ground. It doesn't clean up an ounce of water in this community. And so we got together this morning, as Richard said, and talked with the other water suppliers, Lukens Brothers and Tahoe Keys, and we formulated an approach. We want to go to through a variety of steps, and I'll get there in a second about how we want to deploy this, but we want to ask for 4 things. These will be refined as we go forward, but the first thing is for Lahontan to begin extracting PCE from the groundwater. There are multiple opportunities and options for them to pursue to do that, but to get something in the ground and start taking PCE out of our groundwater. The second piece is to provide some sort of replacement water for Lukens Brothers. They've got a contaminated well that's been offline now going on a couple of years, and that nothing has been done to replace that water. They are getting it from us through our interconnection. The third piece is to install sentinel wells between South Tahoe PUD's wells and the plume, also between Lukens Brothers' well that is not contaminated yet and the plume, and then in between Tahoe Keys, their well that is not yet contaminated, between that well and the plume as well. In addition, so again, it's providing sentinel wells, which will give us a heads up if the plume is heading in a direction that is going to contaminate additional supply within the South Tahoe community. And then the fourth step is to let me see what I've done here. Actually, I looped 2 of those steps in together. Actually, the Lukens Brothers, the sentinel wells. Oh, I'm sorry. The fourth step is to provide treatment for Tahoe Keys for their currently contaminated wells to get them back up to full water supply capacity. So again, start removing PCE, replacement water for Lukens Brothers, sentinel wells, and then treatment for the Tahoe Keys wells, or some sort of replacement water program. Those, in our minds, are concrete actions that will protect this community's water supply going forward while we spend the next decade or so studying the plume. And whether that's us or the RP studying the plume or Lahontan studying the plume, all that stuff has to be done, but none of those studies get
provide protection or replacement water for this community. And so our plan is, as we've started to lay out, is first to go to the executive staff at Lahontan, talking to Patty and Doug, and meet with their executive officers and say, these are the things that we want, and then after meeting with them, take that to the actual Lahontan board themselves. They have their next meeting is in mid-September. I'm sure we cannot get onto their agenda at this point. However, they have a public comment period just like you do. We'll go in and speak to that public comment period. Our intent is to have multiple supporting parties at that meeting with us. In addition to the water supply agencies, we try and bring in other folks around the community, whether that's the city or our legislators, and have them sitting in the room with us supporting our efforts, and so that they hear what we're asking the board to do. And then, if necessary, we will continue to raise this onto the state water board and to anybody else that we need to convince that this is a huge priority and instill a sense of urgency for those entities to start spending money to actually get these four steps, these 4 bullet points addressed.
A couple of questions. Where's the long meeting? Is it here or is it?
It's here.
Victorville?
It's here.
It's here. Okay.
They have a meeting in mid-November in Victorville. That's the agenda we would try and get on.
I think we ought to go directly to them. Forget about the staff. We haven't gotten much response to them. And unfortunately, I wasn't at the meeting last week. I was at the concept. But did we get anything more than we've gotten in the last several meetings? Just more bureaucratic language that tells us why they have to delay and they can't get it.
And I think right at that meeting, Scott basically said that this letter directing the RP to perform this work is going to be out within a week.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was what it used to be. And how many times have we heard that? And here it is 8 days later, and it's still nothing.
And they'll probably give them like 6 months to come back with a plan, just like they did on the Shell station when they had the NTBE spill. They were there when it happened, and they said, give us a plan in 90 or 6 months, something like that. But they need to do things. I think we need to push them, and I think we ought to be at the...
Well, that's kind of the purpose of this letter, is to kind of give them a path. They may choose not to go down that path.
We'll go here and
We're going to try and make it again, raise the level of urgency for them by bringing in a lot of pressure potentially on executive staff as well as the board and potentially the state board to try and make something happen. I think we have been dealing with, really at the staff level, we've had a lot of communications at the staff level below the executive director, way below the executive director, the technical staff on the project. I think they are all operating in good faith. But the problem is beyond them, and that's why. And that's what we've been doing, is working with that, trying to make something happen agency to agency. The problem is we're not seeing the action that we need to be seeing. And so these are concrete steps that we can do to protect our community. And we're going to take that as somewhat as a courtesy to the executive director before taking it to her board. But
she didn't show up at the meeting, did she?
That's correct. Go ahead.
Need to put CC Aaron Brockovich. Just put that down at the bottom of the meeting. We actually interviewed him for the... Yeah, you were with me. But we didn't know who she was. But
it was before the movie came out. Before the movie came out.
With all due respect to our staff, it's hard for our staff to be aggressive and just taking on the world. It's really our job as board members to reach out to other board members. And it wouldn't be a bad idea to warn their executive director, but there has to be a time to protect our community when our board goes to their board.
Well, I think that's why it's actually formulating, this is the minimum that has to happen.
I'm just agreeing, but I'm still frustrated.
Well, we hope that at least several of you can join us at that September meeting in Tahoe, when we go, and even though we're just not on the front end, public comments, we're only going to have a limited few minutes to say stuff. They're not going to let 10 people get up and say the same thing. But if, you know, you could be the spokesman or at least be there so they see us, see who's in the room. And, you know, the city council members have said, tell us what you can do, what we can do to help you. We're hoping that there'll be some city council members, the interim city manager, and all these, the county.
So let's bring that up at our next ad-hoc meeting with the city and let them know the dates and also let them know that we appreciate the support on that.
Let's bring everybody.
I don't have, I believe it's the 13th or 14th.
13th and 14th. I think it's
13th and 14th, but we don't know when the public meeting was at that time, and it's public
the
hearing.
12th, 13th, with the 13th being the morning where there's public comment.
I'll be there physically.
And to one of your points, Dwayne, as well, about our ability to bring pressure directly to other boards. One of the things we're doing, Evo is not going to be part of this effort in any of the contentious meetings because he, as our technical expert, has to work very closely with their staff. And so we want to kind of protect him in that respect so that he's not lumped with us being the, leadership of the district coming in and saying these things. That way our staff can still talk staff to staff.
Well, it just, I don't believe yelling and screaming always doesn't get things done. But boy, 30 years is 30 years.
And we're
40 years.
Some of the conversations that came out this morning, we all feel that frustration of 30 years plus of this issue, but we are really trying to focus this on this is what we got to do going forward. And our expectation is that when we're talking to the Lahontan board or to the state board or to other people, they're going to be raising those questions about 30 years, what's happened in the past, and digging in on that. And while we're focused on the future, and we're going to focus on this and have some expectation that we'll let other people address that history problem and the lack of movement on this, we just got to get them writing some checks to get this work done. At least that's kind of the mission I think that we're trying to really hone in and focus on going forward. But fully expectation, we also discussed this morning about where our intent is to go out and we're going to meet with probably the city staff. We want to meet with TRPA. We want to meet with the League to Save Lake Tahoe, the fund. We want to meet with the chamber and engage everybody in this community, in these community organizations in recognizing this is a problem that's got to be dealt with, and we want help in bringing light to this with Lahontan and increasing that sense of urgency. And so we're strategizing who's meeting with who. Our intent is to talk with, Congressman McClintock's office and Senator Feinstein's office, Senator Gaines, Assemblymember Bigelow. All of those people bring everybody together saying, you got to do something on this.
And McClintock's staff, Brian Leslie was there at that Lahontan State meeting, and Shannon made sure that the folks from Lahontan noticed who was in the room. I said, I got to go see McClintock's staff. So
They're well
leaders there.
Again, I don't think this is the staff that were at that meeting, I think are operating in good faith, quite honestly. In my personal opinion is they're trying to do the best job that they can. They may not be being allowed to do that.
Maybe peer to peer, you ask them what they think would be the best way for us to get things moving. If they're in good faith, they know where the roadblock is. They can know that. It's frustrating to probably be still going on long before we have to worry.
Okay, thanks, Shannon. Nice cheering.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, Richie, you're going to continue with the IMB on yours.
Yeah, I attended a Tahoe Climate Change Adaptation Plan meeting. The California Tahoe Conservancy has hired the EC Davis, and they've actually done some modeling on climate change impacts to the Tahoe Basin. And so what the Conservancy is sort of gathered together and invited a bunch of people, including us, over there to let us know what's going on, to get our input and our questions. And so I went to the first planning meeting. And so one of the things that they offered is that since they've done some modeling work, any needs that we're a peer agency in there, there's other state agencies and there's peer agencies like the city and the county. So if we're doing anything like for example, the Integrated Regional Water Management Group has to do a climate change kind of update on potential impacts. They're offering the research and the modeling that they did to us so that we can, get that done quicker and cheaper. And then also eventually, we'll also be able to feed back into their process what are the agencies and folks doing in the Tahoe Basin to do something about climate change. So I'll let them know that, we're doing sea hydro, all of our projects have an energy conservation part of it, looking at new equipment or processes, even the water pump stations, reducing our cost of our pumping, because we're pumping less water. So we'll be able to feed back into their reporting process, which is going to be, they estimate about a 2-year process. What are folks doing in the Tahoe Basin to combat climate change? So any kind of reduction of power usage on our part, we'll be able to let them, we're going to let them know, what we're doing. So that was just the first meeting, in the emailing out, these, requests for information, requests for questions, requests for, data. So that's, like I said, it's a process that will take place over the next 2 years.
Anaerobic denitrification has been producing.
Is that the new process you talked about?
Yeah, and biogas.
Biogas and other places like East Bay might have basically done, they collect the grease from all the local restaurants and add it to their biogas.
That's another thing.
That's how East Bay Letters achieve, zero usage of utility grid.
Well, in fact, there was a little discussion about a bill in the state legislature to require 75% of the food produce to be recycled, not go into dumps. So, but we've got a real good source right here with restaurants and clubs and something where we build some new digesters. The old ones used to be right about here.
Yeah, no, we were sort of sitting on where we go about this. And you haven't done digestion in a while, but maybe with the new process, it'll become cost effective for small plants like us to go back to digestion. I know our operations department always felt that we were really too small to really be efficient in anaerobic digestion. So, so now the energy is used in the composting operation down in the Carson Valley, so some of it's lost.
But we can reduce the amount of sludge that does come down there.
Well, yeah, it would. That's for sure. So, yeah, some people are expecting that these regulations might percolate down to requiring, somebody taking care of the grease from restaurants and, obviously the expectation of these local wastewater treatment plants would be able to do that.
Well, it is taken care of in restaurants, at least from my knowledge of how I ran mine. We collected all that grease and sold it to a rendering company.
On the waste food.
And then they used it again. It went into the trash.
That's what they wanted to use.
I know, I just don't know how you separate it. That's quite a process. I have to think about that.
They're about 75%, or they don't think they'll get that approval, but the idea is there, they want to do something. Maybe we can sell the sludge as fertilizer,
Back it up?
Yeah, back it up. Organize, that's what it comes from the Milwaukee treatment plant.
Well, there's a lot cleaner sludge in the Milwaukee plant, doesn't it? I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I think Bentley would be upset if they didn't have their composting source.
I think a lot of it is first.
Well, right now, it's pretty efficient and really a fairly low cost way of us disposing of our sludge. Requirements may change in the future. So, why don't I just jump to the next time on the rate study kickoff meeting? I'd like to tell you about our kickoff meeting.
We won't compare. Oh, this is you. It's right.
I know. A meeting was held. No, we had a good kickoff meeting with our consultant HDR, Sean Korn, who you're familiar with.
You remember from last time?
Yes, from last couple of times. Several of us participated from engineering, customer service, and finance. And we're still at the stage of gathering data for him to begin the process. And I think we committed to approximately mid-September-ish to get him data. And then we'll start plugging away from there.
That was it. I like it. Short and sweet.
Then the final item I just wanted to mention is if you've noticed, I don't know if you guys want to be on this, that David Jenkins has been beating the drum, really in response to all the fires that are going on in California, about the responsibility that the public agencies have for addressing the fuel reduction efforts, ladder fuels and brush, everything else on their own property. And he actually has taken pictures, fortunately none of them were district sites, city sites, the Forest Service, residential sized parcels around town that were pretty overgrown. And
he actually had that published online.
Yeah, it was online, I got copies. And so we, with the staff, we had a meeting talking about, our planning and getting at least a summary of our sites and which ones needed some cleaning. And we actually had some of our, already done some effort at it with some of our summer help, cleaning out brush. And we don't want any of our staff trying to cut down big trees, but small trees, brush, ladder fuels and stuff like that. On some of the lots, it's already been cleared off. Lynn has reported that we've actually made the list. She was over there. She kind of ducked out. The Conservancy had a grant project, and we're actually on the cleaning of the Heavenly Creek alongside the treatment plant.
They're doing that today.
Well, we're actually on, the larger project. We're actually on the grant-funded list to be able to get that done. Because it's not just fuel reduction, but it's almost like an NCZ restoration project. 10 acres of property along the edge of a big property. So we just wanted to let you know that the districts are already making efforts to do our part of reducing fuels in the face of anybody asks. So it was just a quick report on it. Anybody want to add anything to that?
That crews has been out there doing what we can other than the big trees. And they've been doing a really good job. We've cleaned up a couple different sites, Mountain Meadow, Mountain View Well.
Real Grove and Wolf the Dog, that's there a lot, so.
And then in the Funds Department, they've been doing a lot of painting and a lot of cleaning of our facilities that we had talked about at the beginning of summer.
Oh, by the way, I wanted to let you know, I had one of our ratepayers had complained that, they did all that thinning out there by the bike path and Westway and all that other trees. Well, that exposed one of our pump stations, and it had, I guess, it had been painted over because of graffiti or whatever. So he had complained about, can you do anything about that? So then he calls me, this was some time ago. So he calls me last week, he goes, hey, thanks a lot. It looks a lot better. I guess you guys went out and painted that pump station.
Yeah. 3 forestry stations already, kind of the 5 there in the pink, 60 era.
Yeah, that salmon color.
Yeah. So I still intend to plan, so we've done Baldwin, Taylor Creek, the one right on the highway there, and Tlack. So we're going to catch Camp Ridge and Kiva. So we call it the Go Away Brown. So it's
No, he was very happy about that.
It's hard to see from the highway. There's a couple lens right there.
Well, and they never even knew it was there until they went through and did all that cutting, but in that area.
Actually, we addressed that 2 months ago.
So it's really wild, the trees are just trying to create a buffer, so.
Well, actually, that was one of the solutions we talked about initially, the paint, but then there's no irrigation out there to get them established, even if you use natives and stuff like that. So I suggested he get a little neighborhood group together and do their own vegetation.
But we also don't want fuels right against our building right there either, right? If they put it out there, we will probably remove it.
Well, I did enough buffer.
There you go.
Well, they put it, they were going to use the wastewater and water. We're going to get in trouble with them.
Shelley's working with the people that have the sugar pine trees that they plant. They're going to do something out there on our property out there. Maybe they could do a few out there. Frankly, the right solution to most architecture was landscaping. And ivy he thought was great because it would covers everything.
Yeah, they were, the Sugar Pine people were very excited about going out and doing some plantings out in some of our open areas, beyond the fence and back of the treatment plant.
I think that we have our school to start saying, get kids to be involved in it. And I talked to Shelley first, because I had gone out and planted some up the North Shore in the spring, and get the little seedlings.
Yeah, they tell me the seedlings are blight resistant, because I had to remove 13 sugar pines from my yard alone because of the blight. I asked them what the cure was. They said plant new ones.
Well, usually what they've done is,
I mean, we're talking hundreds of years old trees. Yeah, okay, that'll help you a lot.
but about 90% of them are susceptible to that blight, but there are a few that aren't, and they're getting the seeds off of those. And
No, I know, that's what they're doing. The seedlings are blight resistant.
Yeah,
It just doesn't help. They have no cure for the ones that are, that's
Well, it'll take a couple of years. Yeah.
Actually, we actually went around to every facility out in the field and prioritized, actually after doing an assessment, we've prioritized 1 through 5, 1 being critical and 5 not needing anything. So we do have a list we're going off of. We've been pretty proactive on clarity.
Well, and I just want to let you know, the public has not, your efforts have not gone unnoticed to the public, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Actually, I think if you're going to, Richard, you guys are up again with Fall Leaf. Come on, Jeremy, I'll give you a break this second. I don't want him to pass out and fall down. I can't see myself ever carrying out here.
Just wanted to give you an update on Fall Leaf. We had told you, or I had told you, that I was shooting for the end of this year, October or so, to have Fall Leaf completely finished. That is not going to happen. We have gone through, we've switched over just about every station to electric, and number 6 is a station that's right in front of the main station there at the marina. And we were going to have that one done, and then the main station switched over to electric, everything going into it. But what we did, working with engineering and the crew, we sat down and discussed it. And instead of going in and just jumping into the main station and getting it done, we're going to take a step back. What we want to look at is, the idea right now is go in there and maybe take a look at installing a bigger wet well. With all the building that's going on out there, everything that, I don't know how much more building is going on. But with a bigger wet well, it gives us more holding time, things of that nature. I think a lot of us think that's probably the wiser way to go, instead of just jumping in and doing something for now. So we'll probably be taking a look at that next summer, doing the final station, bigger wet well. But the guys between pumps, engineering, sewer, water, and I maybe forget some other ones, they've all worked hard this last 2 summers, and we have switched everything over other than the station in front of the main station. So I feel that they have accomplished quite a bit, considering all the problems and all the talks that we've had about fallen leaves since I've been here. So to us, it's a big accomplishment, and hopefully by next summer we'll have it all complete. We did use outside contractors in a few different situations, rock work. A lot of us aren't that good at rock work, so we thought it'd be good to have professionals come in and do it, just because it's in people's front yards. And John set up a lot of that, and I think it's worked out quite well. Everybody out there seems really happy. We are dealing still with a odor problem at the main station. I talked to a lady the other day, she's on the board out there, Alexandria, wondering what we're going to do about the smell at the main station. I guess it's been that way for years. So I explained to her some of the steps that we are taking is, one, hopefully with a bigger wet well, we'll maybe eliminate some of that smell from everything churning around if it's bigger. Maybe that'll help eliminate some of that. Stanford Camp, they are going to put a grease interceptor in. When I last talked to them, Jeremy and I talked to them, they by November to have that installed. We're seeing an extra amount of grease coming out. That's just one issue. They did go in and put a carbon filter setup.
Yeah,
right?
the trough side of the well. It was a big basin where the fluid was cascading from the septic side, so it was creating high stink going on in there. So we did take a carbon drum and we just poured a hole through the top and the vault and used a blower and we're drawing it through there. So it kind of helped a little bit. Last week we took Bonitis and sprinkled it all on all the carbon, so it smells. It doesn't smell like poop, but it smells like other bad things. We are getting these potassium penanganate tablets that we were doing some research on the internet, and we found a vendor that we're going to try. We got 50 pounds of it, and we dangle it down in the fluid, so it's supposed to help with H2S and other odors. So we're going to give that a try.
When we finish the conversion, completely eliminating the vacuum system will reduce the amount of air that you have to scrub.
Yeah.
Because right now, even with a smaller vacuum system, we still, to create a vacuum, have to exhaust that air out of the top of the building with a little full electric system. You wouldn't have to do that at all.
Well,
So we have to-
we've drawn that air through the vacuum system, and it's a foul air that we're drawing.
Yeah.
And so we're putting that through carbon now, and we're literally putting carbon in there every 2 weeks. So we're changing it up, just trying to.
Yes. And hopefully these tablets are supposed to be the new and improved thing, so.
So you're thinking you guys are gonna look at this over the winter and then tackle it next spring?
Yes. Yes. Like I said, we did want to have it done by the end of this dig season, but I think, and everybody else thinks that if we take a step back and just kind of evaluate by the time we're done, we should have a real solid system out there, we're hoping.
Makes sense.
And, grease is a big source of odor. Because we require, the grease interceptors in all the other large restaurants in town. Stanford Camp serves a lot of people out there.
Yes.
And they put in new dishwashers and stuff, which is quite better at removing grease from their stuff, but it's dumping it into our system. So, that should help immensely.
Yes.
Getting their grease out of the system, getting it taken, removed, and then hauled away from Stanford Camp out of that unit.
We're actually pumping their septic twice a month, every 2 weeks, just trying to stay on top of the grease problem. So far it's working out, but we still have a kind of grease that's not through the system.
Okay. Appreciate it. We have one more, just one real quick one that happened since the agenda went out. Doug's gonna come up.
No bombs, nothing like that?
No bombs, but still has to.
Little spill up on Pine Grove and Forest. We were up flushing a line up at the end of the dead-end water line at the end of Aspenwall, and they were dumping into our manhole, and which was about 12 feet deep. Well, they checked a couple downstream manholes when they were flushing, everything was fine. But then when it got down to Pine Grove and Forest, that manhole's only about 3 feet deep. So they just overloaded the system at the top. We spilled probably about 500 gallons, but fortunately it ran down. It was clean water, except it had gone through the sewer, but it makes it a sewer spill. And it ran down one block in the dirt across the driveway, and we were able to sweep it all, and it ran right into another manhole down on Paradise in Pine Grove, I believe it is. So
It was a spill, we thought you should know, that's why we're here.
We talked to Lon and all that.
you bet. In fact, we went over to Lahan because we know there's been some movement over there, so we met who I'm dealing with now, Trevor Miller, because I believe Rob Tucker has been moved up and promoted. So we talked to them, went over to the county, saw Karen and Maria, and just did some eye-to-eye, contacted some PR, and took care of it, and he's going to do the report.
I would point out that, what was the tenure of the two people who were on the water crew who were doing this flushing, right? How long had they been with us?
One we just hired, he's only been here a month and a half.
And the other one was
Tim.
Yeah, so this is an example of the transition, I think, that has been taking place demographically with our crews and our staff. You know, we have now a lot younger folks out there, a lot newer, smart, competent, capable people, but we make mistakes. And that this was a learning opportunity. I'm confident that the crew that is doing the flushing, the folks who are here now will never make this mistake again. But this is unfortunately one of the outcomes of this transition that we're having with our staff and the tenure of our staff.
This wasn't an unavoidable one, this is one that would have been solved with experience.
Yeah, this is self-inflicted.
Okay.
Well, that's the, and on the Long Lake Lake, they were able to figure out what the,
No, that's
were,
yeah.
Yeah, that one worked out real well.
Yeah.
They were out there checking manholes. Unfortunately, they just didn't know the system, that it went from 10 to 12 feet.
And their elevation at the end of Aspenwall is up from where the flats where Pine Grove and Forest are, and so that's where the shallowness and the difference in the manhole depths came in. They never crossed them on.
And this was the water crew flushing a water main, and they were, again, doing what they were supposed to be doing, but this wasn't the sewer guys who know that sewer system a lot better. It's just one of those things, but I just want to point it out again, as unfortunately, we're going to have to learn from some of these things. We are going to do everything we can not to replicate them, but it's one of the consequences of our transitions.
Well, thanks, thank you.
Thank you.
We have one more.
I was gonna say, we have something next, don't we?
Yeah.
I don't see it on my list, but I see a fancy little handout here for Julie.
Yeah, I had another one of these where I snuck it under the wire after meeting with Jim and Kelly on Monday at the operations committee meeting. I thought it would be a good idea to bring it to the larger board, some of the things that we talked about, and Jim and agreed. So here I am again, just like a month ago. This time I'm talking about our water system buried assets and the work that we are doing to develop asset management programs so that we can responsibly maintain and replace our assets over time. I've given you a table separate from this one that has a little bit more detail about each of these asset management programs that we have been talking about and developing. On this slide, I have narrowed it down just to kind of the titles, but the color coding that I've got here, the yellow ones and the green ones are the programs that we have been working on most immediately at developing. And the green ones I'm not really going to focus on today. Just wanted to let you know that we are working on those. They're either self-explanatory, or you've heard me talk about them before. So I think we can kind of try and keep it short and sweet, and I'll just focus on these yellow ones. The asset management programs that we are working on really are divided into three main categories. We're looking at system monitoring, inspection. So things that we can do out in the field just to learn more about the condition of our assets. And then there's those programs that really speak to system operation, and that's where we're working very closely with our field crews and listening to their needs for tools that we can provide to them to help them do their jobs better. And then the third set is the planning and capital improvements programs, and those are the ones that the engineering department is using to help develop a capital improvement program that addresses those places that we have the greatest need first. So the first one I wanted to talk about was the tools that the engineering department has been developing to prioritize how we do our inspections and monitoring of our sewer mains. I talked to you about this last year, and this graphic is actually exactly the same one as last year. We haven't gotten to the point where we have updated it at all, but what we are doing is basically trying to identify criteria that are meaningful to us, that speak to the likelihood of our sewer mains failing and the consequences if they fail. And so last summer, we met with the sewer crews and they helped us understand better what conditions they're seeing the most failures of our sewer system. And we have populated scores for each of those criteria so that we can kind of paint a picture of where we need to go first. So on this figure I've shared with you, the red pipes, those are what we're calling the very high priority pipes. Those are the ones that have a combination of a critical score both on the likelihood side of failure and on the consequence of failure side. We used this tool earlier this year to create a list of pipes to give to the sewer crew so that we could really help them guide their TV inspections for the year. In light of the upcoming Prop 218, we wanted to get a well-dispersed, representative look at our system so that even though we're not going to be able to get through all our pipes in 2018, we would at least have a good representation of the types of conditions we expect to see in the system. So this year, we have been making a very concerted effort to pick up the pace on our TV inspections, kind of steering away from just the reactionary or responses to contractor needs and into something that is more systematic and will give us a better idea of what's going on in our system. We prepared a list that we started with the EC list, which is the enhanced cleaning list, those pipes that the sewer crew cleans more often because they've had a history of problems and backups. And we started out going through those. It was a very slow-moving process. The reason we started with those is we were hoping that we would find out some things that would allow us to reduce that list. Like if they were a one-time problem area versus a repetitive problem area, maybe it would be appropriate to get those off of the list or at least reduce how often we were going out to those and cleaning them. But we found it about May timeframe that we really needed to pick up the pace at which we were getting our inspections done. So we moved away from the EC list, and Brent, the asset manager, he helped pull together a list of what we're calling the next 300. It actually had 360 some odd pipes on it that he wanted the sewer crew to go look at because they did represent kind of that breadth of conditions and potential consequences that we expect to see across our system. And so the sewer crew has been doing a great job getting out and running those inspections. Their productivity has really increased as they become more familiar with the tools. And they've stepped up at our request and are doing inspections on Fridays, Saturdays, Mondays, days where we're either short-staffed or not generally working at all. We've got people coming in on overtime to get through this list of 368 types as quickly as we can. Let's see. So we've gotten through about 485 pipes as of the 13th of August, so the beginning of this week. And I think we're on pace that we'll get up to 600, maybe as far as 660 by the time the information is due to fall Hughes to inform the Prop 218 and the rate study. So the T-beam, that's the tool that we're using for our gravity mains, which works great in pipes that are not flowing full, but we also have 19 miles of sanitary sewer force mains, 37 miles of export line, and at least one fully submerged siphon, inverted siphon that crosses under the Upper Truckee River. And we've used different tools for pipes that flow full than pipes that are only partially full. And unless we want to take a line out of service in order to inspect it, which would require bypass and be very labor intensive. So we've been trying to figure out what's the best path forward for getting an inspection of these force mains. We haven't ever looked inside these mains. They've been in service for 50 to 60 years. So it's overdue to figure out a way to keep track of their condition. We have a pilot test that we rolled out in April of a tool called MTA Pipe Inspector, and this slide actually has part of the report that they provided to us. It looks very similar actually to a TV inspection report. Downside was the water in the main, even though we had been flushing for several hours because we were having to mix it with raw sewage during the course of the test, it was too murky for us really to be able to see much. So I'm not certain that we'll move forward with this particular tool, but we're continuing to investigate other options. There are technologies being rolled out all the time addressing just this problem because we're not the only ones having it. So we'll continue to keep you guys apprised of what we figure out and what we want to move forward with on this front. And in the meantime, we're taking into consideration this need to actually look inside these pipes as we're moving forward with our alternative project development for the Big 5 pump station. Because every one of those has a force main coming out of it, and so if we can do make some improvements at those stations to help make this job easier, we'll go ahead and address those things now. After the 2017 winter, with all of our high INI flows, there was a reconcerted effort put out by the sewer crew to get out and look at all the manholes in the system. And we decided that it would be a good idea to help standardize the information that was coming out of those inspections to give them a tool that they could use in the field. And this is what it looks like now. It's a paper form. Our goal is ultimately that we will convert this into something that's digital, give them tablets in the field with a form that they can pull up and drop downs that they can just click on and put in the information that's useful, and then it's already entered. Where we sit today, we've received maybe 750, 1,000 individual sheets of paper on these manholes, and we are entering the data by hand as it comes in. And so it's pretty laborious as it stands now, but at least we're capturing the information, and we'll have it available to us as we need to make decisions about, what areas of our system do we rehab. The sewer crew has a dedicated crew in the summer with their temporaries. They're teaching them how to do the scoring here and what to be looking for, and they're sending them out to the most critical areas to collect this information for us.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Did you say it's been done, and aren't there about 7,000 total?
Yeah. So basically, every pipe has one manhole associated with it. So you've got 6,600 pipes in the system. So there's at least 6,600 manholes in the system, and 6,600.
Yeah,
yes.
That's sections.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you've got an equivalent number of manholes and pipes, generally speaking. Yeah. So, I don't have an exact count on how many we have collected, but I was talking to Doug earlier, and our best guess is it was somewhere in that 750 to 1,000 range. One thing I'll note is that it doesn't sound like the TV crew is collecting these as they do their TVs, because they're trying not to be distracted by it, but we've got this dedicated crew that this is basically what they're doing.
Okay, but these are the sections you're doing. Which is
These
only
manholes are not these manholes are not the same sections that we are TVing.
Oh,
These are the manholes that the sewer crew has deemed are have the highest potential for contributing I&I and having problems that need to be addressed. Slightly different approach than the TV.
and with the 600 lines that you're doing is about 1/10 of the whole system.
Correct. If we could get to 660, my engineer's brain would be really happy because that is 10% of our system.
Yeah.
But 600 is a nice round number. So, yeah.
I think it works out about 1.9 million feet. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, okay. 330 miles, I think is the number that I generally use for the sewer system. So all these various programs that we are developing are really feeding into a sewer rehabilitation and replacement program. We want to bring all the information together to help us develop a plan for how to proceed. And I wanted to share these figures with you because I think that they really do start to paint a picture for you. The graphic that you have here is the red splotches are those pipes on our system that the TVs from this summer only have identified have a defect score of 3, 4, or 5. The scores are in the range of 1 to 5. And so a 3, the defects are really different. Each type of defect, the severity of the problem doesn't really tie very well to a specific score. But if you really want to generalize, you could think that, typically speaking, a 3 would be something that we might monitor over time. A 4 might be something that requires a project that is not an emergency, and a 5 would be something that we should act now. And but like I said, depending on what type of defect it is, we might react differently, even within those kind of general scoring criteria. So some project areas are starting to take shape as you look at this. In the North Upper Truckee area, there are a number of pipes that we identified that were kind of clustered together that had defect scores of 3, 4, and 5. Also down, branching out from Highway 50 in Myers into that neighborhood that goes towards the elementary school. There's a string of pipes that has a combination of everything from gaskets being like rolled and protruding into the pipe, sections of pipe missing, and structural sags in the pipes you have standing water. And so this is the sort of output that we were hoping for when we started into this process. Is that we would get some crystallization as we got into these TV inspections about where our attention needs to turn. And then the table at the top basically gives you the rundown of total number of defects that we've seen on the roughly 485 pipes that have been inspected so far. And just to clarify, this is total number of defects, not total number of pipes with a defect. So many of the pipes have multiple defects, and that's why these numbers are so high.
And we could multiply this times 10 and have an idea of what's in the whole system because it's so important.
Yeah, and we're currently, right now, we are working on some of those statistics to see if what we've collected so far truly is a representation of the system as a whole. And we are seeing some gaps in what is coming back versus what we had originally asked for. Like, there's still a few hundred pipes for them to TV off of that original list, 150 or so, and it seems like some of the ones that are left are ones are of a particular type. So so far it's not a really great representation, but we hope by the end it will be.
But it's interesting, the number that are especially submit is so much greater. Vitrified clay is got a few, but
well, and that's actually one of the interesting findings of of the statistics that we've looked at so far. So asbestos cement, according to what we knew about the system going into this, it made up somewhere in the 80s, 85% roughly of our system. So you would expect to see more defects in the asbestos cement pipe. According to the data that we had at the get-go about vitrified clay, it said that only 7% of our system was vitrified clay. And yet we had 38 and 29 defects, we had a lot of defects on vitrified clay, considering what a small percentage of our system it was. However, there was also a fairly large percentage of our system that was identified as unknown before we TV'd it. Most of those have turned out to be clay. And so we're getting a little bit different picture of what is actually in our system as we go through and look at it this summer. So I will leave you with this last slide, which is a photo taken out of the bug station sewer TV, and that's the list, that's the lines here that go down Apache from the bug station towards the elementary school out in Myers. And what you see at the top of this picture is a joint in the asbestos cement pipe. And then coming back from that joint, you see this sort of longitudinal black mark. That's where the bottom of the pipe is missing. And so this is one of those projects that we are working on right now to try to rectify before the end of this grading season. So you'll hear from me again once we make the best plan for how to address that pipe. It's possible that this is candidate for liming. But it's also possible that's not the best solution for this particular pipe, because the pipes downstream, one of the things that we identified when we did the TV is that there are a number of sags in them. And so if there is an opportunity for us to raise this whole pipe, this particular segment, and so basically rebuild it so that in the future we can address those sags and put a little bit more tilt on those pipes, get a little bit better flow, then we want to proceed that way. So that's pretty much it.
That's good. We had a much longer discussion at the operations committee on Monday, and we didn't have these maps. Yeah, these were good. I think it's really.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, so the production quality isn't perfect, but
it gives an idea of, the magnitude of where they are. That's good.
Thank you for putting this together. This next 218 is going to be a really important one, and it's also going to be very important that we actually know a little better what we're going to be dealing with. It's going to be a tough decision no matter what, but if we have more information on what the exact condition of our aging pipes are, then it makes it a little easier.
yeah, that's been made clear to us trying to develop the asset management program that, we need to paint the most accurate picture that we can and use all the resources that we've got. So.
One thing I would ask is, we've got some numbers in here, and I think that's the first time we've shown you some numbers as far as the defects, et cetera. As Julie went into a little bit, the complexity of that calculation, I would encourage you not to draw any conclusions or share with customers any of these kind of numbers at this point until we've had a chance to process them.
We don't know if it's a representative sample or what it is.
Yeah, thank you.
But it goes with what we said yesterday about all the new tools we have that assess all this stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Great job. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sure Gary, you got something you want to report, right?
Actually, going to be quiet.
You're going to be quiet right now? Okay.
Yes, we'll get the close.
Yeah, we've got a tiny little bit in closed session, right? So this would be a good point to move out of open session into closed session. Yeah, let's take nothing to report. Meeting adjourned.